Delighted to say that we're joined, as always, with our good friend at X-Tech Pads. And it's been a little while, Coach, for people who maybe missed the early ones of these. Super Bowl winning head coach with the Baltimore Ravens, Brian Billick. Tell us a little bit about X-Tech Pads, because it's been a while. Maybe some new people are watching this who don't know.
Yeah, it's the number one pad in the NFL. Very proud of the growth of the company. Bob Broderick, Teddy Monica put this together about 7 years ago, and literally kind of out of the back of their car, it's grown to the point where they're the number one pad in the National Football League and major colleges, whether it be Auburn, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan. And they're available at the high school level and overseas as well. It's the best pad on the market. You got to take the head out of the game, like everybody knows. Well, in doing that, you better have good shoulder pads, and these are the best in the market.
Yeah, top quality. And I have tried them on and tried the technology and had my hand smashed between two of the pads.
There you go.
And honestly, it was, I mean, I'm not going to say I didn't feel a thing. I'm not a tough guy or anything, but it, like the amount of the impact it took out was astonishing. So definitely, if you're going to be playing, and it is such a growing sport here from that perspective, do check out X-Tech Pads. Coach, I want to ask you about a couple of decisions. We had the owners meetings this week, and the NFL have brought in a couple of new positions. One in particular is this idea of the minority coaching initiative. A team that loses a minority assistant coach to being a head coach, or an executive to a general manager, will receive 2 third-round picks, or 3 if they lose 2. What do you make of this decision to go through, and do you think it's going to make a big difference?
Well, I don't know. We've had this initiative, not in this specific form, but trying to promote minority candidates. Most importantly, it's got to be minority candidates into the coordinator's position, then the coordinators as on a head coach, because that's the usual path. And Bill Walsh started this years and years ago, trying to access minority coaches, giving them the resources and the background to kind of elevate into those positions. This puts some real teeth in it. It basically tells the organizations, we're going to reward you by creating this pipeline and supporting your minority coaches in moving up. So yeah, I think it'll have an effect. I don't know the sheer numbers of it and what it will be. It really comes down to the organizations, and really the question needs to be put to the minority head coaches. Why don't you have minority coordinators? Because very few do. And they can tell you more about the pipeline and what needs to be done to nurture that, so that head coaches, whether they're minority head coaches or not, are more and more comfortable seeing the capabilities of minority coaches as coordinators.
Because it's a league where we're talking about the playing percentages being BAME being 85% over various years. Is it something when you're in a coaching situation that you find that if you have someone on your staff who can make a connection with people who understand a background, to know the difficulties maybe people have come through to get to where they are, that helps to mold that team culture?
Yes, anytime you put a staff together, you want diversity, and not only just in obviously racially, but in terms of geographically and their backgrounds. And everybody needs to bring something to the table. And clearly, as you stated, with the numbers of African Americans on rosters, you want to provide a conduit for your players via those coaches, and they will other coaches as well. But clearly, they're going to see someone that looks like them, that they might be able to communicate more comfortably with. So every staff is very conscious of that as you put that together.
Now, I want to ask, the other measure they put through was to introduce an 8th playoff team if we don't end up completing a full season. We've seen how COVID has affected the league, and actually how they've kind of ridden the wave the last couple of weeks and not had games moved. But I don't know, there's a feeling over here with the Premier League, for example, where they brought in this 5 substitutes to help them coming off the back of COVID. And my concern is maybe that this goes from being a temporary measure for something like this to becoming a permanent measure.
Yeah, I'm not, I hope it doesn't. I don't think we want to be the NHL where you play 80 games to limit teams or whatever it is in the National Hockey League. Because you want it to have, you want to have the best teams there, certainly given the circumstances. And I think what they're doing is, should a team or teams between now and the end of the season miss a game because of the COVID, that they can't be rescheduled, then they don't want that to be punitive. So by opening up the playoff field, you eliminate, you just go down one step further in terms of who you're going to let into the playoffs. And those teams likely get into the playoffs, and like most wild cards, the wild card teams may get beat. Yeah, you could maybe get on a run, and it'd be great, and it'd be exciting for those teams. These are unique times. But I think the league is very conscious about letting the playoff field get so big that regular season games cease to have real meaning. And they don't want that. So given a unique circumstance we're at right now, I think they're just giving themselves that latitude, that wiggle room. It's a little like the college football where you take the top 4 teams. Well, at the end of the day, 5 and 6 are getting screwed, because of the nuance of, so, well, let's open it up to 6. Let's open it up to 8. Well, then that just means 9 and 10 are going to, so you can carry this out too far. So I think the league is very conscious of that, but to address the potential, I think it's just that, the potential for some inequities in terms of the playoffs, they're leaving themselves that latitude.
I think you're absolutely right as well. Talking from a personal perspective and from the UK perspective, I think the part of the popularity here versus NBA versus NHL versus baseball is that every game does matter. And I think that really appeals to fans that, it doesn't even matter. I mean, even Patriots Jets Monday Night Football ended up being a cracking game, but realistically, on paper, it really couldn't have been, but it still means something. Every game does. And that's what I, like you, want to desperately avoid. We've got a cracker on Thursday night, actually, talking about the playoff field for the AFC. Rare that AFC South games on Thursday night have been that meaningful. This one looks pretty special between the Titans and Colts.
Yeah, because both are teams that have shown sign. The Colts have been kind of a sneaky good team. Now they obviously just lost to the Ravens, but they did a really nice job, particularly the first half. It was really the defense of the Ravens that saved the game, because that defense did a really nice job of limiting Lamar Jackson. Tennessee at times has looked overpowering with Derrick Henry, and Ryan Tannehill has obviously continued on from what he did last year. There are times, they've looked a little more vulnerable, and maybe not the elite team when you think of Kansas City and Pittsburgh, and you might throw Baltimore in there. But they're on that verge of it, and they're a very good football team. And anytime you can run the ball, particularly this time of year, as we get into it, when you can run the ball that well, you're going to be a factor. So, yeah, these are two teams that are just kind of on that cusp of getting into that next level of being thought of as elite teams in the AFC. And the winner of this could very well do that.
And I just want to finish off asking about a couple of game management questions, because for me, I think it's the most fascinating element of being a head coach is managing games, particularly late in games, managing the clock. And there were a couple of decisions this weekend I wanted to get your thoughts on. Firstly, Mike Tomlin's decision to not kick the field goal and extend their lead to 8 points and actually open up the opportunity for the Cowboys to potentially go drive and win the game.
Yeah, when you make those calculations, again, it's what's the flow of the game? How's my offense been doing? How's my defense been doing? Are they going to be able to hold up against this team now marching the length of the field? It just comes down to sheer odds. What are the odds of me making a 2-point conversion, actually getting it on 4th down versus kicking a field goal? The clock management, as I've always only half joked, some MIT Digit Domo calculated that there are 1 million variations in the last 4 minutes of an NFL game based on score differential, where you are on the field, down and distance. And when you get criticized for some of these clock management, I've always said, well, 500,000 of them I got cold. I'm good. It's the other 500,000 that just kick my butt, that are hard to negotiate sometimes. But I think we talked about this before. The league as a whole, whether it's the analytics or whatever, coaches are being a little more aggressive, trying to steal that one more possession, trying to get that one extra point, not knowing how the ultimate game's going to go. And ultimately, it's viewed from the prism of did it work or not. If it worked, you were genius, and if it didn't, you're the village idiot. And even though there are 1 million reasons why you make the decisions you do, it's going to be judged clearly, strictly by whether it worked or not. And obviously it did for Mike Tomlin. So you got to say, okay, he made the right move.
Well, there is that. But then obviously you look at a situation like the other one from this weekend that really stood out was Cliff Kingsbury in that Dolphins-Cardinals game. And I think kind of young head coach, second year in the league, deciding earlier on in the game from his own 30-yard line, went for it on 4th and 1. but didn't go for it on 4th and 1 with 2 minutes remaining and 2 timeouts. And I think that's the thing. We all hear the analytics. I think fans are smarter than maybe they once were. And I'm just always surprised that there's not someone in a head coach's ear, maybe, who specializes in, actually, here's how that could play out. Here's what makes most sense.
And there is that you have those guys, but they're usually in the booth, which I want them standing next to me. When they convince me I should go for it on that 4th and 1 and I don't get it, I want everybody to know whose idea what that was. And you do play the analytics to a certain degree. I think we've talked about it before. There was another study that said, some MIT guy said, yeah, you need to go for it anything less than 4th and 2. If you do that all year long over the course of the season, you're going to come out ahead. And I've always said, okay, yeah, but when I go on, it's 4th and 2 on my own 20 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, I want that guy standing next to me because I want everybody to know that this is the guy who said this was going to work. But yeah, and again, the ebb and flow of a game, going for it early, and that became obviously a real shootout. These 2 young quarterbacks obviously look spectacular. So the decision he made early versus later on going, geez, should I not do this? This guy on the other side of the field looks pretty hot and is playing pretty well. The Miami defense played very, very well. And that may have had a factor to do with it as well. Kyler Murray had a great game, but I found it interesting that DeAndre Hopkins did not have a target in the entire first half, which tells me it's not like he wasn't in the game plan. It was a matter of Miami came in and said, okay, we're not going to let you get to DeAndre Hopkins. You can get to anybody else, but we're not going to let you get DeAndre Hopkins started. And it ended up being a good move on their part because obviously, even though the Cardinals put up 31 points, they played pretty darn well, and their offense was able to deliver with the 34 points.
And I guess that's maybe the actual final thing then, just to ask about that, because there was such a reaction to Tua's first game, which was a win. I mean, the guy's 2-0 right now. Everyone's getting excited about Justin Herbert, who looks fantastic, but yeah, Tua's gone out there and won 2 games. How difficult is it, or easy is it maybe, to block out all that noise when you've made a decision and you're headstrong that is the right decision?
Yeah, and all the coaches and players say the same thing. Well, I don't listen to it. I hold it at arm's length, and they're lying because they hear it, even if not in the building. They, when they go to the market or the cleaners or they get home and their mother or their wife are going, well, what, why about this? What's this? What's going on? Yeah, after just one game, his first start, a little premature to get panicked about Tua. And he bounced back very well against a good Cardinal team. And now we'll see how it plays out the rest of the way. But certainly he showed that the game's not too big for him. Both these young quarterbacks, fascinating stories to see them battle one another in kind of similar ways. They're going to be fascinating to watch. Obviously, Miami is going to play a Charger team that is just reeling right now. Playing well, but not well enough and losing in the last second. And Arizona and Buffalo with their own young quarterback, Josh Allen, who I thought was spectacular against Seattle. And now with Josh Allen, I think we can take off the governor or the qualifier saying, well, what about the complete? He looks good. He looks really good. And he's just going to get better and better. I thought the game against Seattle was spectacular.
Coach, it's always an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time out to speak with us. Coach Brian Billick joining us with X-Tech Pads. Wonderful stuff. We'll chat again soon.
We'll do it.